Hi there, it's Billy Tarasio from the Modern Divorce Podcast, and today I am so excited to be joined by one of my favorite people, Elise Bowie. Elise is a family law attorney, owner of a firm in Seattle. She also served as a guardian ad litem and as a parenting coordinator, and I'm so excited to talk to her about how parents can better deal with high conflict situations and protect their children. Thank you so much for being here, Elise.
Oh, thanks, Billy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So first, can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Oh, sure. I'm a family law attorney in Seattle, but I come to that pretty circuitously. I was an attorney in New Orleans forever, lived in New Orleans my whole life till that little storm hit Hurricane Katrina. Then we had to, zip across to Georgia. We evacuated to my then husband, now ex-husband's family's home in Georgia with our slew of children. We showed up one night and we're like, "Hi, here we are." And we didn't tell them we were coming. We didn't think they were going to appreciate the showing up. So we thought it best to just surprise them.
Mhm.
And we stayed there for a full year. New Orleans was a disaster. My husband got relicensed in Georgia. He's an attorney as well. We then decided we were going to move. So we moved to Minnesota. And this whole entire time, he and I knew we were going to get a divorce. I mean, we had started a divorce big discussion before the hurricane hit. So we had to kind of put our nose down and figure out how were we going to deal with this pretty big disruption. And we decided to stay together solely to just stabilize the family, so that we could figure out where we're going. We moved to Minnesota. I retook the bar exam there, started a practice there. Um, and then we decided, okay, yes, we could divorce. Things were like more stable, finances were more normal. And so we did that. And then I got remarried to somebody in Seattle. And so then I moved to Seattle with all the children, his blessing. And then he has come, my ex moved to Seattle as well. And then I started a family law firm here in Seattle.
Wow. Okay, so right off the bat, this sounds like a fantasy divorce. I don't know anybody who really can break up and both be on the same page. It's so rare. I don't want to say it never happens because we do the uncontested divorces, but typically it is rare for two people to be on the same page on timing that a marriage needs to end. So let's start there. How did you do that?
Well, I would say we were not on the same page so far as timing went. It took, I was, I think, ready to get out before he was. But I also knew, just though I hadn't practiced family law by then, I just knew from all my reading, it was going to go a lot better if I could get him to where he was ready as well, rather than me just being like, peace out, I'm
Mhm.
gone. And especially with the context of all these little children, we had four children. I mean, I think there were like 10 and under at the time.
Mhm.
And so I really kind of, I think, worked really hard, went to counseling with him, did things to kind of help get him to a place where we really didn't have what I call a lever and a left behind. I mean, we had two people who knew the relationship was not good for us and it was not good for our children. And so then it became a matter of how do we problem solve around, how do we make a situation as good as we could for our children out of our divorce that was inevitable.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the exit matters, and
Oh,
it matters a lot.
huge. Yeah, huge. I mean, don't you do those consults with clients where you're talking to the lever who's literally they've been gone for years emotionally, and it's like, wait a minute, we got to slow this train down or this is going to be a disaster.
Yes, and I'm so glad you mentioned that because typically I think by the time somebody is ready to come see an attorney and file for divorce, it has been about a 3-year process.
Oh yeah.
3 years. They've already mourned the loss of their marriage.
Right.
They've come to terms with the fact they've lost hope in the future of their marriage and they've decided there's no other way than to get divorced, which is a terrible, awful thing that all of us mourn.
Yep.
So how long did it take you to get your spouse caught up to you?
A while, because so Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005, and that was I mean, I started considering divorce actually within weeks of quitting my law firm job when I had child number 3, which was around 1999. So things were bad and progressing worse from 1999 to 2005.
Wow.
And then when 2005 came, I think he and I were both pretty okay at that point to do it. Then the hurricane hit and it kind of threw everything up in the air. And so we then had to say, okay, let's not, decimate everything, and let's figure out how to resettle somewhere, get the kids settled financially. As an attorney, you don't just go show up in a new town, hang your shingle in the, main street, and you've got a job. You got to pass a bar exam or you've got to get licensed. We both had Louisiana legal licenses, which have no reciprocity. So, I mean, we each had to go take a new bar exam, which is a 9-month application, character
Yeah.
and fitness process. I mean, it's a slow going thing. So financially, that was really tough post Katrina, to go through that. And he got licensed first because his practice was up and running in New Orleans and he had a federal part to his practice. So we, focused on that. Whereas I did not, I was not working. So I was home homeschooling our kids at the time. So I just continued to do that. And we decided the hurricane was a great time to learn to horseback ride. So we became like the horseback riding family. But, and then once we got to Minnesota and I was able to, get licensed there as well. And, then we were really able to say, okay, now we can do this.
Okay, so did your marriage have high conflict when you leading up to the time when you decided to get a divorce?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, and I was nowhere near as educated I am on the damage I was causing my children through that conflict. I mean, we had some doozy arguments that, especially my 2 older children, knew about, could hear. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was not always pretty for sure. And, and that's something I kind of live with now. And, I have to continually, I realize almost that my 2 older children led a very different existence. And, with the developmental stages they were in, it was very different than my 2 younger children. I mean, the 4 kids have very different experiences about what they remember, how they see our divorce, the whole thing. And, that's something I still obviously struggle with because, you don't mean to cause that damage. So many of us don't realize we're doing it when it's happening.
Right. And I think the bigger issue is how can it be avoided?
Oh, to me, that's like, that is the game changing issue is how can you go through this process in a way that you are not taking down your children with your marriage,
Mhm.
that you are able to see how that conflict is damaging them and then be able to avoid it in such a way that it's something that your children, obviously they're going to have trauma, sadness, all those things just from the transition. But I
Right.
mean, there's a lot that you can do, as the parents to put your children, I say, put them in the center of your decisions and make them the focus of your decisions, but don't get them caught in the middle of your fight. I mean, there's a big difference between, child centered parenting decisions and having them caught in the middle of a nasty divorce.
Absolutely. Okay, I have so many questions because this topic is so important and it's so important to people who are getting divorced and everybody knows they want to protect their kids. But knowing that you want to protect your kids and having the ability to do it are 2 different things, especially because you've got 2 people and these 2 people are at war. So if you're deciding between do I stay in a house where there's high conflict or do I move out, what's better, slowing it down and staying in the same house or moving out?
I think it really depends on the parents and their ability to mentally handle it. I mean, I'm no scientist or psychologist, but I really think based on people's emotional intelligence, can they keep themselves grounded and centered? Can they not bite on those things that their spouse is saying? And I mean, we all know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
When somebody drops those little quips that are just ugly and they are hurtful. And I mean, if you bite on it at all, if you show emotion, if it's going to be something that's going to impact your mood around the children, I say being separated is way better. I think being in a home filled with conflict is very negative for children. And I mean, in my work as a guardian ad litem, I see that all the time. Whereas the minute they're able to split and that tension is able to come down, I mean, the children, you can almost sense a sigh of relief when I'm like evaluating the children and I'm maybe visiting them at schools or at home. I see totally different children in two homes that are peaceful than in one home that's filled with conflict. Now, obviously, finances really come into play here, whether somebody can afford two homes and what they can do. And I mean, I think that was one thing, at least for my ex and I, when we did do the split and I came out here to Seattle and he did not come out here to Seattle immediately. He stayed in Minnesota. And so we would do the back and forth thing. But I mean, when we actually bought our house here in Seattle, we bought a house big enough so he would have a room in it so that he could come and stay out here with the kids in their own home so that, he could go to parent teacher conferences, meet their friends, drive them to lacrosse. You know what I mean? Whatever you do as a parent, but all those things. And then Doug and I would go, we had a house on Whidbey Island and we would just go up there when he would come in town. And it worked really well because it allowed him to have, all that experience.
That is so, it's like the dream. And and I think most people would cringe at the idea of having their ex come stay in their house. Um, so how did you get from this high conflict marriage to this very um, workable post-divorce relationship with the father of your children?
Truly through my guardian ad litem work. I mean, you get trained in enough damage that's occurring. And I came to fully appreciate my part in that damage and my part in causing harm to my own children. And I mean, that was not my intention. I often say to people, do you hate your ex more than you love your child? Or do you love your child more than you hate your ex? You've got to make that call. I mean, and it's as fundamental as that. And I mean, I fundamentally love my children way more than I hate my ex. And when I realized the damage that I was doing, I mean, I made very distinct actions to stop and to really change. And I mean, I had to really change a lot of things because I mean, I was a stay-at-home mom. My ex, owed me all kinds of money like spousal maintenance, child support, all the things. And he was not so great at doing those things. And I would get like upset and angry. And I literally woke up one day and I was like, this is the most ridiculous way for me to spend my life, like upset and angry at him not doing something that has been kind of the bane of 18 years of marriage. So why do I think it's going to change now?
Yes.
And so I decided that. And then I'll never forget telling Doug, I just looked at him one day and I said, I'm going to go earn circles around this clown. I never, ever want to need his money again.
Okay, there's so much of what you just said there that I think is so critical. The things that we don't like about our ex post divorce are the same things that we didn't like when we were married.
100%.
And those
are worse.
Never going to go away. They're
No.
totally worse. They're absolutely worse. They're never going to go away. So, what are some actionable things that we can do to make changes ourselves to make things better for our kids?
I mean, go get a counselor or a coach. I mean, get some help. Like, realize that you are caught in that spiral, and that you are finding yourself angered, like where your feelings are impacted by your ex. I mean, I got to the point that I realized that it was insane that my ex could cause any kind of negative feeling in my life. Like, that was me handing him over my power. And
Right.
that makes zero sense to me, in a post-divorce setting. So, coming to terms with that I was going to own all of my power. And in my mind, that included my emotional power, physical power, and financial power, and that meant that I was going to just go back to work and I was going to start again, take a bar in Washington, start again. And I mean, I moved to Seattle and started at a $25 an hour job as a case manager in a mediation office, you know, and that is what I did when I first arrived here in 2011. And, you know, since then I have completely flipped that. And,
Mhm.
and it is what it is. And I mean, my ex still goes and lives on many of things I have. I mean, he's been in my home during the pandemic because he lives actually on a sailboat. And so when the pandemic first hit, he stayed in our Seattle house with my son, who was a junior in high school. And then he is now, my son has been in Seattle, and we bought a large boat, and it's a long story, but my son has lived on that during his senior year. And David goes over and cooks for him every night. Like, they have this lovely old time, and they discuss all their boating things that they like to do. So it's all good.
That's really fantastic. Everything I heard you say was that you have to change you. You have to stop depending on your ex for anything. And if you are dependent on anything, be it financial, emotional, practical, figure out another plan.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's pretty, I think, doable. The other part is a lot harder, figuring out how to emotionally turn off the triggers that took so many years to create. And you know, the emotional reactivity that people have from their exes, it drives them crazy.
It, but it ruins their life. I
Oh,
mean, I feel like people are, I mean, they're taken down really sad, angry rabbit holes by sometimes the simplest of things, just getting an email, seeing that person's name, or getting a text message. And literally, I heard the most brilliant thing the other day. I work as a parenting coordinator. So I, a lot of times, live in between high conflict couples and make it where they don't see each other's names and they only see my name. And, you know, and I take out all those triggering words and things. And obviously, I mean, I cost a fair amount by the hour, so that's not always cost effective. I work with somebody here in Seattle named Sandra, who I delegate things to. She just does everything. She's amazing. Well, she has a client, and she actually told me during our Maximum Mom podcast that she has a client who was getting super angry. So she hires Sandra just to read the emails and bottom line it for her so she doesn't have to see them, because it was causing her all this emotional upset. And I mean, boy, has that made my mind run. I'm like, I'm going to start a business that just will read your emails, you know, forget all the legal training of parenting coordination and all this and the court reports and whatever. It's like, let's just make your life better. Let's just not read the email, not be triggered. And I mean, when I used to read emails and then I'd respond, my kids used to say, ooh, that must have been a bad email, because they would hear me clickety, 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 click.
right. Yeah, absolutely. So I think figuring out what the triggers are, and then you got two options. You can figure out how to avoid them. But the other thing that has personally really helped me has been EMDR,
Oh, yeah.
which stands for eye movement rapid desensitization.
Yeah.
I think I may have it wrong, but it actually like reduces the emotional reactivity and the sensitivity to triggers, which is so valuable with an ex.
I mean, it's kind of life changing.
Yeah, none of us want to be, you know, we all want to be our best selves. We want to show up at parent teacher conferences that are joint and not be like, you know, a
Yeah.
falling apart human. You don't want to be that person. But if every time their voice starts talking, you become unglued, like that's gonna ruin your parent teacher conference.
Well,
So you
and
can,
it ruins everything for the children.
yeah,
I mean, it has been fascinating because, I mean, obviously at first we could pass in the night though, and it was interesting because even though we set up all this stuff from our kids' vantage point, things are flowing. You know, David's coming into the house, Doug and I are leaving. Like, we don't even see each other. We just, he's got a key or he has the code and whatever. And so it flowed well. But I mean, then over time, we got to the point where we could attend football games together and, you know, go to things and drive to far places. And he would show up and we'd sit by each other and all, you know, he might drive some kids, I might drive some kids. And we'd all be there to see, one of the other kids play a game or, be involved in a tournament. And, and at first the kids were like nervous about it. They were like, well, how's this going to go? And it's like, this is going to go just fine. I mean, there's not even the slightest problem. And that has been really fascinating, I think, for our children to see. And especially during this pandemic for Ethan, our youngest, I mean, to be able to see David and I just communicate about the house, the pets, I'm like calling him, are you taking good care of my kitties? And like, the whole bit, like, and then when we wanted to sell the house, I was like, okay, I need you to pack up this room since you're chilling in my house. And, and he was like, all right, fair enough. And so,
Wow.
and that was really good for Ethan, to see all that kind of just collaboration. And I mean, obviously the pandemic provided just another, for us, a second natural disaster type of thing where it's like, okay, we need to just put our noses down and do what's right for, at the point then, Ethan, and figure out how do we get through this with as little upset to him as possible.
Mm-hmm. But you were both on the same page at that point. He could do that, you could do that.
Oh, yeah.
And it sounds like you may be an advocate of kind of parallel parenting. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. I think parallel parenting works really well in most high conflict situations, assuming you have two healthy people. It becomes a real problem, I think, when one side of that equation is really mentally unstable or has got some, tendencies that are really troubling, because then I think there's sometimes concerns about, the children's safety, whether it's emotional or, making sure maybe all their academics are taken care of and those types of things. But I think we co-parents can learn that too, where, I mean, there is no doubt I was the parent that was like on duty for the things, schooling and whatever. And but my kids also know, like, okay, that's mom's strength. And I mean, David is this jammin' cook. Like, I can burn any meal. David can cook. I mean, he can look in the most empty, pathetic refrigerator and whip up the most delicious dinner. So when my kids would be like, what's for dinner? I'm like, I don't know. Go to your dad, because he is going to be able to whip it out and it's going to be amazing. So, trying to teach the kids too, like, how do you like work to your both parents' strengths,
Right.
I mean, and that's part of reality. Let's be serious. I mean, when you go to a job, you're going to have bosses that have different strengths and weaknesses. And I mean, why play up their weaknesses? I mean, let's figure out how to work to each other's strengths and get what they need. And so, I mean, I've always encouraged my children to, work to their dad's strengths. He loves to do outside things. He takes them hiking, sailing, all those kind of things. I'm like, go off. Well, that's another thing I have to say. You know how some parents really struggle with what they call like the Disneyland dad?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like totally fine with the Disneyland dad. I'm like, you know what? If your dad wants to take you and do fun things and that's his jam, I mean, go have fun. Like, go do it. I mean, there's not one iota of upset or jealousy or whatever. I mean, obviously, if I want to go be a Disneyland mom simultaneously, I can. I don't tend to, because I have been the mom doing all the things. And so, and I haven't had the money a lot of times, historically, to do things. But I'm like, you know what? That's okay. If that's what you're doing, go have fun. I mean, kids need that. They need fun.
Well, that is truly loving your kids more than you hate your ex. That is truly being bigger than yourself when you can say, I wish I could do these things with my kids and I can't. And I still am happy that they get to go do it.
100%.
And especially when he wasn't paying you. He
I know,
owed you money, he wasn't paying, and instead he was taking the kids and being Disneyland dad. I can understand how that really makes moms mad. How is it that you can, and I shouldn't say moms, because this happens with both sexes.
Yeah.
But how did you get to that place where you were really like, I'm letting it go?
it was it was selfish for me, because I didn't want to be angry. I did not want to give over one more day, week, month to him for my emotional well-being at all. I mean, like, I had it. And when I told Doug the day that I was going to just like earn circles around this clown, I took that so seriously, and I kind of went on a mission, and I put all the kids through college. I mean, I've done all the things that I needed to do. He has not participated in those things. And what can I do? I can't I mean, yeah, could I take him to court time and time again? Of course. Do I want to spend my hard earned money in a contempt hearing? Oh, hell no. Like,
Right.
no.
Right.
um I'd rather pay for a month of food for a kid or whatever. And I knew I had the potential to do that, and so I just decided to focus my energy on that and not allow him to be involved in my emotions at all. And it's been really inspirational for me to do what I do.
I bet. I bet it was so freeing and liberating and empowering.
Oh yeah, all those things, I mean, I've thanked him.
You
I'm not-
have?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
how did that go? You were like, David, thank you for being a deadbeat and not paying your child support.
Absolutely. It allowed me to be my best self. It really did. And it allowed me to grow in ways that I would never have grown. I mean, I would never have done a lot of the things I've done had I not had the necessity to. And I think that sometimes, that the necessity is the mother of invention. And I
Yeah.
think that and I think it's shown my kids all kinds of things. I mean, and I mean, the kids know like who's been sending them to college, but all that is good. I mean, I also think kids can learn, you learn both how to act, how not to act, how your actions impact others, how somebody can take actions and decide that they're not going to impact them. I mean, my kids have learned a lot of positive things. And I mean, I think that, and even during the pandemic, watching me be concerned for their dad or, like concerned, did he have everything he needed at the time? And, my children were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, we're in a pandemic. Like, this is the time that, I need to reach out and help your father, not be a problem.
Elise, I literally could talk to you all day. I miss you. I wish we could hang out more.
I know too.
And I think this conversation has been so valuable. So I'll probably have to have you on again, but we're out of time for today. Tell our listeners how they can reach you.
Well, I mean, you can go to our website, it's EliseBuiFamilyLaw.com. And that's, my law firm's website in Seattle. And then you can always email me. I always am happy to answer people's questions because I know we have sort of a unicorn situation. And so people often are like, whoa, how did that go down?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much. You too. Enjoy your holidays.
You too. Bye.